Girl rescued unloved dog from market. Just watch what the dog does next. Lightning split the dark sky as rain pounded against the market's worn tin roof. Through the downpour, a German shepherd's silhouette emerged, chained to a rusty post, his matted fur dripping wet. The market had closed hours ago, but 5-year-old Emily Matthews pressed her face against her bedroom window, unable to sleep. The dog's desperate howls had drawn her attention from 3 blocks away. "He's still out there," Mom Emily whispered, her small fingers tracing raindrops on the glass. Victoria Matthews watched her daughter's reflection in the window, recognizing the same determination she'd seen in Emily's eyes at the market earlier that day. The dog had been there for weeks, a silent guardian of a neglected corner stall, until today when Emily first noticed him. Thunder crashed again, and the dog's howls grew more desperate. Emily turned to her mother, tears welling in her eyes. "He's scared, just like me. Please, we have to help him." Victoria hesitated, remembering the vendor's cold words that dog's worthless. Better off dead, but something in her daughter's pleading eyes broke her resistance. John, Victoria called to her husband, "Get the car ready." Minutes later, their family SUV crawled through the flooded streets. As they approached the market, their headlights caught a horrifying scene. The rising waters had nearly reached the dog's neck. The chain, wrapped tight around the post, gave him barely enough length to keep his head above water. Emily's scream pierced the night. "He's drowning." Without hesitation, John Matthews jumped into the knee-deep water, bolt cutters in hand. The dog's eyes, filled with fear and desperation, met Emily's across the darkness. In that moment, neither of them knew that this storm would forge a bond that would change not only their lives but their entire community forever. Dear viewers, your support means the world to us. By subscribing to our channel, you're helping us continue sharing powerful stories of hope, love, and resilience like Emily and Thor's journey. Each subscription enables us to reach more people and spread awareness about animal welfare. Thank you for being part of our community. The Matthews family lived in the quiet suburban town of Millbrook, where Victorian houses lined maple-shaded streets. John Matthews, a respected pediatrician at the local children's hospital, and Victoria Matthews, a high school counselor, had moved here 5 years ago, just before Emily was born. Their modest blue house with white trim stood out for its well-tended garden, where Emily spent countless hours watching butterflies and talking to birds. Emily Matthews wasn't like other 5-year-olds. While her classmates at Millbrook Elementary rushed to the playground during recess, she could often be found crouching near the school's flower beds, gently coaxing injured butterflies onto leaves or comforting lost baby birds. Her kindergarten teacher, Miss Anderson, had never seen such extraordinary empathy in someone so young. Victoria often found herself explaining Emily's unique sensitivity to other parents. "She feels everything so deeply," she would say, watching her daughter share her lunch with stray cats behind the school. Emily's room was filled not with dolls or toys, but with detailed drawings of animals she'd encountered, each one named and given its own story. The Matthews had already witnessed their daughter's extraordinary connection with animals when she was just 3. During a visit to her grandmother's farm, Emily had approached a horse that even experienced handlers struggled to calm. To everyone's amazement, the horse had lowered its head to her level, allowing her to stroke its nose. The local vet had called it a miracle, but for Emily, it was simply natural. Despite her gifts, Emily's sensitivity often made life challenging. She would cry for hours after seeing injured animals on TV, and family trips to the zoo became impossible because she couldn't bear seeing animals in cages. Her parents had consulted child psychologists worried about her intense reactions, but were assured that Emily's empathy, while unusual, was a gift that would serve her well in life. John and Victoria had learned to adapt their lives around their daughter's special nature. They carefully screened movies for any hint of animal suffering, and Victoria had started volunteering at the local animal shelter, bringing Emily along to channel her caring nature productively. The shelter staff had grown to rely on Emily's intuition about which animals needed special attention. During the week, Emily attended Millbrook Elementary, where she struggled to connect with her peers who didn't share her deep concern for animals. While other children played house or tag, Emily would organize animal rescue missions, searching the playground for insects that needed help. Some kids called her weird or bug girl, but Emily remained unmoved by their taunts, secure in her special connection to the animal world. As Emily grew, her parents noticed that animals seemed to sense her presence. Birds would perch closer when she was in the garden, and neighborhood dogs would stop barking as she passed. It was as if she possessed a silent language that only animals could understand. This gift would soon prove to be more significant than anyone could have imagined, as fate brought her face to face with a certain German shepherd who would change her life forever. At the corner of Wellington Street Market, behind stacks of wooden crates and wilting vegetables, Thor's story was written in scars hidden beneath his matted fur. The once proud German shepherd, former member of an elite canine unit, now sat chained to a rusted post, his golden eyes dimmed by years of abuse and neglect. Marcus Peterson, the market vendor who claimed ownership of Thor, had a reputation that sent shivers through the local animal welfare community. His stall, selling allegedly exotic pets, was a front for darker dealings. Thor had come into his possession 6 months ago through means he kept purposefully vague, but whispers suggested connections to an underground network of dog-fighting rings. Thor's journey to this point had been marked by betrayal. Originally trained as a search and rescue dog, he had excelled in his training, showing remarkable intelligence and gentle disposition. But during one operation, he had been stolen, his microchip removed, and his identity erased. He passed through multiple hands before ending up with Peterson, each transfer stripping away another layer of his dignity. At the market, Thor's existence was a grim routine. Peterson kept him perpetually hungry, feeding him just enough to keep him alive. The chain around his neck was so short that Thor could barely lie down, forcing him to stand for hours in all weather conditions. The once gleaming coat that had been his pride was now a mess of tangles and dirt, hiding multiple old wounds that had never properly healed. Despite the cruelty he endured, Thor maintained a quiet dignity. Market regulars noticed how he never growled or snapped, even when Peterson kicked his water bowl away or yanked his chain. Instead, Thor would watch the passing crowds with patient eyes, as if waiting for someone to see past his ragged appearance to the noble spirit within. Local vendors had witnessed Peterson's mistreatment but remained silent, fear of retaliation keeping them from reporting the abuse. On particularly cold nights, some would secretly toss scraps of food toward Thor when Peterson wasn't watching. One elderly flower seller, Mrs. Robinson, sometimes sprinkled water near him on scorching days, though she never dared to approach too closely. Thor's true value to Peterson lay in intimidation. The mere presence of a large German shepherd, even one as gentle as Thor, kept potential thieves away from his stall. Peterson would boast to other vendors about having trained Thor through methods that made even hardened market workers wince. What they didn't know was that Thor's restraint came not from fear, but from his inherent nobility, a quality his abuser could never break. The local authorities had visited once, responding to an anonymous complaint, but Peterson had smooth-talked his way out of trouble, producing forged papers and claiming Thor was well cared for, just naturally thin. The investigating officer had left without taking action, leaving Thor to endure continued abuse. As weeks turned into months, Thor's spirit began to fade. The proud posture that had once marked him as a working dog slumped, his muscles weakening from constant constraint. Yet somewhere deep inside, a spark remained, a memory of what it meant to serve, to protect, to be loved. That spark waited silently, like a banked fire, for someone to recognize it and kindle it back to life. Little did Thor know that his salvation would come in the form of a small girl with a heart big enough to see past his broken exterior to the hero within. The Saturday morning sun had barely risen when Emily tugged her mother's sleeve at the entrance of Wellington Street Market. The usual weekend crowd buzzed around them, but Emily's attention was fixed on a far corner where a large dog sat chained in the shadows. Her small hand gripped Victoria's tighter as they made their way through the bustling aisles. "Mummy," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. The German shepherd's ribs pressed visibly against his dull coat, and a heavy chain cut into his neck. As they drew closer, Emily could see crusted blood around the collar, evidence of countless struggles against the restraint. The dog's eyes, though weary, held a gentle intelligence that made Emily's heart ache. Marcus Peterson's gruff voice cut through the market noise. "Keep away from that dog," he emerged from behind his stall, a riding crop tapping ominously against his leg. "He's dangerous. Not some pet for little girls to play with." But Emily, with the intuition that had always guided her around animals, saw no danger in those sad golden eyes. The scene that unfolded next would haunt Emily's dreams for months. As Peterson approached his stall, he noticed his merchandise had been disturbed. In a flash of rage, he turned toward Thor, blaming the dog for not barking to alert him of intruders. The riding crop rose high in the air. No Emily's scream pierced the morning air, but Peterson's arm was already descending. Thor didn't flinch or growl, he simply closed his eyes, a resignation that spoke of countless similar moments. The crack of the crop against Thor's side echoed through the market, drawing uncomfortable glances from nearby vendors who quickly looked away. Victoria pulled Emily back, but her daughter broke free, planting herself between Peterson and Thor. "Stop hurting him," she demanded, her small frame trembling but determined. Peterson froze, surprised by this tiny challenger. Thor, sensing Emily's protective stance, lifted his head slightly, a flicker of his old nobility returning to his bearing. "This is my property," Peterson snarled, gesturing with the crop. "I'll treat it how I please," but Emily stood her ground, tears streaming down her face as she met his cold stare. Behind her, Thor let out a soft whine, not of pain, but of concern for this small human defending him. Victoria watched in amazement as her daughter, usually shy around strangers, transformed into a fierce advocate. "He's not an it," Emily declared, her voice carrying across the now silent market aisle. "He's hungry and hurt and scared. You're a bad man." Other shoppers had stopped to watch the confrontation. Mrs. Robinson, the flower seller, clutched her apron with worried hands. She had witnessed months of Thor's mistreatment, but had never dared to intervene. Now, watching a 5-year-old girl show more courage than all of them combined, shame colored her weathered cheeks. Peterson glanced around, suddenly aware of the attention. His grip on the crop loosened as he forced a laugh. "The dog's fine, just needs discipline, that's all." But Emily wasn't finished. She turned to Thor, reaching out slowly despite her mother's gasp of warning. The German shepherd, who Peterson claimed was dangerous, gently touched his nose to her small palm. In that touch, something profound passed between them. Emily felt the years of pain and loneliness in Thor's gentle greeting, while Thor sensed for the first time in years a pure heart offering unconditional kindness. "We have to help him," Mummy Emily pleaded, turning to Victoria with eyes that held both determination and desperation. "He's waiting for someone to save him." "I know it." Victoria Matthews looked from her daughter to the abused dog, then to Peterson's scowling face, and made a decision that would set in motion events none of them could have predicted. "We'll be back," she said firmly, leading Emily away. "And Mr. Peterson? We'll be bringing others with us." As they left the market, Emily looked back one last time. Thor's eyes followed her, and in them she saw not just pain, but a spark of hope that had been missing moments before. She didn't know how, but she knew with absolute certainty that their paths were now intertwined. The Matthews kitchen was unusually tense that Saturday afternoon. Emily sat at the counter, her untouched sandwich growing stale as she pleaded her case. John Matthews paced the room, his doctor's mind calculating risks and responsibilities. Victoria leaned against the sink, still shaken by the morning's confrontation at the market. "Sweetheart, taking in a dog is a huge responsibility," John began, choosing his words carefully. "Especially one that's been," he hesitated, searching for gentle terms, "through such difficult times." Emily's lower lip trembled, but her voice remained steady as she countered, "He needs us, Daddy. Nobody else is helping him." The debate had been ongoing for hours. Victoria had already made several calls to the local animal control, the police, even their family lawyer. The responses were dishearteningly similar. Without clear evidence of abuse or proper documentation of ownership, their options were limited. Peterson's history of smooth talking his way out of trouble was well known. "What about the neighbors?" Victoria voiced another concern. "Mrs. Davidson next door has small children." "If Thor has aggressive tendencies," Emily interrupted, passionate in her defense. "He's not aggressive. You saw him, Mom. He's gentle. He's just scared and hurt." Her eyes filled with tears, like those kids you help at school who act tough because they're hurting inside. John sat down heavily, running a hand through his hair. As a pediatrician, he'd seen the devastating effects of trauma on children. Could the same principles apply to an abused animal, even if we wanted to help? He reasoned, Peterson won't sell him to us, and legally purchasing Thor would only fund his abuse of other animals. The doorbell interrupted their discussion. On the porch stood Mrs. Robinson, the flower seller from the market, clutching her worn handbag. "I saw what happened today," she said without preamble. "I've watched that poor dog suffer for months, too scared to speak up. But your daughter..." Her voice cracked. "Your daughter showed more courage than all of us combined." She pulled out a small notebook, her hands trembling. "I've been keeping records. Dates, incidents, witnesses. I was too cowardly to use them, but maybe they can help you." Victoria invited her in, and soon their kitchen table was covered with papers documented evidence of Thor's systematic abuse. Emily listened as the adults talked, her young mind grappling with concepts like evidence and legal proceedings. When Mrs. Robinson described Thor's condition when he first arrived at the market, bleeding, terrified, with fresh surgical scars suggesting a removed microchip, Emily's small fists clenched under the table. The conversation was interrupted by another arrival, Sarah Bennett, the local veterinarian. News traveled fast in small towns. "I heard about what happened," she said, joining them at the table. "I should warn you, rehabilitating an abused dog like Thor won't be easy or cheap." She looked directly at Emily. "He'll need extensive medical care, behavioral therapy, and infinite patience." Emily stood up, her voice small but unwavering. "I have patience. And I can help with the therapy. I'll read to him like I do for the shelter dogs. I'll use my allowance for his food. Please." She turned to her parents, her expression mature beyond her years. "Remember what you always tell me about standing up for what's right." John and Victoria exchanged looks. Their daughter's allowance wouldn't make a dent in Thor's potential medical bills, but her willingness to sacrifice it spoke volumes. The gathering in their kitchen, neighbors they barely knew coming together to help a suffering animal, seemed like a sign. Finally, John spoke. "We'll need a plan. A legal strategy, medical support, documentation of everything." He looked at his daughter's hopeful face. "It won't be easy, Emily. This could be a long, hard fight." Emily's response was simple but profound. "Thor's been fighting alone for so long. Now he'll have all of us." Her words hung in the air, a testament to the pure wisdom sometimes found in children's hearts. As their impromptu council of war began forming plans, none of them could have predicted how their decision to help one abused dog would ripple through their community, challenging long-held silences and forcing hidden cruelties into the light. Monday morning dawned with military precision in the Matthews household. John had taken a rare day off from the hospital, Victoria had rescheduled her counseling sessions, and Emily was permitted to miss school, a first in her young life that underscored the gravity of their mission. David Anderson, their family lawyer, arrived early with a briefcase full of documents and a grim expression. "Peterson has friends in low places," he warned, spreading papers across their dining room table. And some in high places too. This won't be as straightforward as we'd hoped. The evidence Mrs. Robinson provided revealed a pattern of abuse far deeper than they'd initially suspected. Thor wasn't Peterson's first victim. There were whispers of other dogs, mysterious disappearances, and a trail of silenced complaints. But proving it would be another matter entirely. "We have 3 options," Anderson explained, his coffee growing cold. "We can file a formal complaint with animal control, but Peterson's likely to move Thor before they investigate. We can attempt to purchase him outright, though that validates Peterson's claim of ownership. Or," he paused, looking at the determined faces around him, "we can build a case proving Thor was stolen property, possibly a former service dog." The doorbell chimed again. Sarah Bennett entered with medical supplies and a thick file. "I've contacted every vet clinic within 100 miles," she announced. "Found something interesting. 6 months ago, a search and rescue dog matching Thor's description disappeared during a training exercise. The handler was devastated, claimed the dog was not just highly trained, but exceptionally gentle." Emily, who had been quietly drawing Thor's picture, looked up sharply. "That's why he didn't bite Mr. Peterson, even when he was hurting him," she said softly. "He's too good to hurt anyone." Their planning was interrupted by an urgent call from Mrs. Robinson. Peterson had noticed their sudden interest in Thor and was making threats. "He's saying he'll put the dog down if anyone causes trouble," she reported, her voice shaking. "Says it's his right as the owner." The room erupted in urgent discussions. John called his colleague at the hospital board, where Peterson's brother served as a member. Victoria reached out to her network of social workers, seeking any connection to Thor's possible past. Emily sat amidst the chaos, tears rolling down her cheeks as she imagined Thor facing another night of abuse. Then came the game changer. Sarah's phone lit up with a message from a former colleague. "There's a retired K9 handler in Bedford County," she announced, her voice rising with excitement. "Says he might recognize Thor from our description. He's driving down tomorrow." But tomorrow seemed too far away. Through the window, they could see storm clouds gathering, the same weather pattern that had nearly drowned Thor just days ago. Emily's small voice cut through the adult discussions. "We can't wait. He's scared of storms." The urgency of the situation forced their hand. David Anderson straightened his tie, a decision made. "I'll file an emergency injunction," he declared. "Based on Mrs. Robinson's evidence and the potential stolen property angle, we might get a temporary custody order. But," he warned, "Peterson will fight back, and he fights dirty." Victoria looked at her husband, then at their daughter. The risks were significant legal battles, community backlash, potential threats from Peterson's connections. But the alternative, leaving Thor to face another night of abuse, was unthinkable. "Do it," John decided, his doctor's oath to do no harm extending now to a 4-legged patient. "File whatever you need to file. We'll deal with the consequences." Emily hugged her father, understanding in her young way the sacrifice they were making. Outside, thunder rumbled ominously across the darkening sky. In the market, Thor would be facing the storm alone, not knowing that a small army of defenders was mobilizing on his behalf. As David Anderson rushed to the courthouse with their hastily prepared documents, the Matthews family began preparing their home for a new arrival. They didn't know if they would succeed, but they were committed to trying. In their hearts, they knew that sometimes the right path wasn't the easiest one, and that saving one life could mean risking everything else. The first hint of Thor's extraordinary past emerged 3 days after his dramatic rescue. The Matthews family had converted their garage into a temporary sanctuary, following Sarah Bennett's advice to give Thor a quiet space to decompress. Emily spent hours sitting just outside the door, reading stories aloud while Thor gradually adjusted to his new environment. It happened during a routine medical checkup. As Sarah Bennett prepared to examine Thor's injuries, she dropped her stethoscope. Before it hit the ground, Thor had already moved, not to attack, but to catch the instrument gently in his mouth. The precision of his movement made Sarah pause. This isn't just good behavior, she mused. This is professional training. Further clues surfaced during Thor's daily routines. He responded to hand signals nobody had taught him, positioned himself protectively whenever car doors slammed nearby, and demonstrated an uncanny ability to detect Emily's moods. When she had a nightmare one night, Thor began whining at the garage door minutes before she woke up screaming. "Watch this," Emily said one morning, leading her parents to the garage. She had been spending hours with Thor, earning his trust through patience and gentle words. To their amazement, Thor responded to complex commands in multiple languages: German, French, and what appeared to be specialized police signals. Victoria filmed everything, building their case that Thor was no ordinary abused dog. The breakthrough came during a thunderstorm. Emily had insisted on staying with Thor, knowing his fear of storms. As lightning cracked overhead, Thor's demeanor changed. Instead of cowering, he positioned himself between Emily and the garage door, alert and focused. When a tree branch crashed through their kitchen window, Thor led Emily to safety before the glass could shatter, demonstrating both his protective instincts and crisis training. Sarah Bennett brought in a retired K-9 trainer, James Wilson, to evaluate Thor. "These aren't just learned behaviors," Wilson explained, watching Thor perform a series of complex tasks. "This dog has extensive search and rescue training. The way he checks rooms, his attention to environmental changes, he's been professionally trained for human protection and crisis response." More revelations followed. During a walk in the park, Thor suddenly pulled Emily aside, seconds before a cyclist lost control on the path where they'd been standing. Later that same day, he alerted the family to a gas leak in their heating system, potentially saving their lives. Each incident added to the growing evidence that Thor was no ordinary German Shepherd. The most compelling demonstration came unexpectedly. A local school group was touring the veterinary clinic where Thor received treatment. One child, overwhelmed by anxiety, began showing signs of an impending panic attack. Before any adults could react, Thor gently approached the child, applying pressure therapy exactly as trained service dogs do. The incident was captured on the clinic's security cameras, providing crucial evidence of Thor's professional training. Emily, who had always insisted Thor was special, began documenting his abilities in her diary. "Thor knew how to help before we taught him," she wrote in her childish script. "He just needed someone to let him be himself again." Her observations, though simple, would later prove crucial in understanding Thor's background. James Wilson spent hours reviewing the evidence. This level of training, he explained to the Matthews family, is extremely specialized and expensive. Someone invested years in developing these skills. Thor isn't just a trained dog, he's a highly skilled professional who was stolen from his original purpose. As Thor's true capabilities emerged, so did the family's understanding of the magnitude of Peterson's crime. He hadn't just abused an animal, he had attempted to break the spirit of an extraordinary being, one trained to save lives and protect the vulnerable. The revelation added new urgency to their legal battle and deepened their commitment to restoring Thor to his former glory. Yet even as they documented Thor's abilities for the court case, the Matthews family recognized that his most remarkable trait wasn't his training or skills. It was his capacity to love and trust again, despite everything he had endured. Emily, curled up beside Thor during their evening reading sessions, would often whisper to him, "You were always a hero. You just needed someone to believe in you again." The path to Thor's rehabilitation began in the Matthews converted garage, now transformed into a healing sanctuary. Sarah Bennett's initial medical examination revealed the full extent of Peterson's cruelty: multiple poorly healed fractures, malnutrition that had weakened his bones, and deep tissue scarring that suggested years of systematic abuse. The proud German Shepherd, once a pinnacle of specialized training, had been reduced to a shadow of his former self. The first weeks were crucial and challenging. Thor required intensive medical treatment, including surgery to repair damage from the tight chain that had cut into his neck. Each procedure brought new revelations of past trauma. X-rays showed evidence of old breaks that had healed without medical attention, telling a silent story of prolonged suffering. Emily insisted on being present during Thor's treatments, singing softly to him as Sarah worked, her small hand never leaving his fur. Behavioral challenges emerged alongside the physical healing. Thor exhibited severe anxiety in enclosed spaces, likely a result of prolonged confinement. He would panic if doors were closed completely, forcing the family to adapt their entire household routine. Night times were particularly difficult. Thor's nightmares would wake the household with heart-wrenching howls, his powerful body trembling with remembered fear. The community's reaction added another layer of complexity. News of Thor's rescue had divided the town. While many supported the Matthews efforts, others, influenced by Peterson's stories of a dangerous animal, began avoiding their house. Parents pulled their children away when Emily walked Thor on their street. Anonymous calls to animal control reported false incidents of aggression, each requiring documentation and defense. Victoria found herself fighting battles on multiple fronts. The school board questioned the wisdom of allowing a potentially dangerous dog near children, despite Thor's gentle nature. Local businesses, some connected to Peterson's family, suddenly became less welcoming. Even their church community seemed uncertain, with whispered concerns about the family's obsession with saving one animal. The financial burden grew heavier each week. Medical bills mounted as Thor required specialized treatments, including hydrotherapy for his damaged muscles and alternative therapies to manage his anxiety. John picked up extra hospital shifts to cover the costs, while Victoria sold her beloved garden artwork. Emily emptied her piggy bank, insisting that every penny go toward Thor's care. Yet amidst these challenges, Thor's true nature began to emerge. Despite his trauma, his instinct to protect and serve remained intact. During his therapy sessions, he would often pause his own treatment to comfort other animals in distress. Sarah noticed how he would position himself between approaching strangers and Emily, not aggressively, but alertly, his professional training shining through the layers of abuse. Breakthrough moments came in unexpected ways. During a particularly difficult physical therapy session, a child with cerebral palsy visited the clinic. Thor, despite his own pain, gravitated toward the struggling child. To everyone's amazement, he naturally adjusted his gait to provide balanced support, demonstrating both his training and his innate compassion. The incident became a turning point in public perception. The rehabilitation process revealed Thor's extraordinary intelligence. He quickly learned to distinguish between different medical tools, anticipating treatments and cooperating with procedures. Sarah documented how he would self-regulate his exercise, stopping precisely when he reached his physical limits, a level of body awareness that spoke to his sophisticated training background. Small victories accumulated. Thor learned to trust the sound of closing doors, understanding they would open again. His nightmares became less frequent, though Emily still spent many nights sleeping near his bed, her presence a constant reminder that he was safe. He began to play again, tentatively at first, then with increasing joy, especially in the early mornings when the family would gather in the backyard. The most significant challenges came from Thor's deeply ingrained trauma responses. Certain triggers, the crack of thunder, the sight of chains, even specific vocal tones, could send him into a panic state. The family learned to predict and manage these episodes, developing a complex system of support that involved specific voice commands, pressure therapy, and safe spaces throughout the house. Professional training proved both a blessing and a challenge. Thor's ingrained disciplines sometimes conflicted with his healing process. He would attempt to perform duties beyond his physical capabilities, driven by a deep-seated need to serve. The family had to learn to read his subtle signals, to understand when his professional instincts were pushing him too hard. Emily's role in Thor's rehabilitation became central. Her innate understanding of his needs often surpassed the experts' recommendations. She developed her own healing protocols, reading sessions where Thor could rest his head in her lap, gentle grooming rituals that helped him associate touch with comfort rather than pain, and quiet moments where they simply sat together, rebuilding his trust in human companionship. As weeks turned into months, Thor's transformation became evident. His coat regained its luster, muscles rebuilt under proper care, and most importantly, his eyes lost their haunted look. Yet the family understood that healing wasn't a straight line. Every step forward might be followed by temporary setbacks, each new challenge requiring patience, love, and unwavering commitment to Thor's recovery. As Thor fought his battle for recovery, Emily faced her own challenges at Millbrook Elementary. Word of her family's dangerous dog had spread, transforming the once quiet 5-year-old into an unwitting center of controversy. Former playmates began avoiding her at recess, their parents' fears trickling down into playground politics. "Dog girl," they whispered behind her back, the nickname carrying a sting that made her blue eyes fill with tears. Miss Anderson, Emily's kindergarten teacher, noticed the changes in her usually bright student. Emily's drawings, once filled with butterflies and birds, now exclusively featured a German shepherd, sometimes heroic, sometimes wounded, but always with golden eyes that seemed to peer from the page. During show and tell, while other children brought toys or vacation souvenirs, Emily shared Thor's medical updates and recovery milestones, her voice carrying a maturity that made her teachers' heart ache. The transformation in Emily's character became evident in unexpected ways. When Billy Thompson, the class bully, knocked over her lunch tray and sneered about her killer dog, Emily didn't cry or run away. Instead, she stood up straight, just as Thor was learning to do in his physical therapy, and replied clearly, "Thor's not a killer. He's a survivor, and he's teaching me to be brave." Victoria watched her daughter's evolution with a mixture of pride and concern. Emily's natural empathy deepened, but now carried an edge of fierce advocacy. She began keeping a detailed diary of Thor's progress, her childish handwriting recording every small victory today. "Thor wagged his tail 3 times," or "Thor didn't have nightmares last night because I read him 2 extra stories." The bond between child and dog grew in profound ways. Emily developed an almost supernatural ability to anticipate Thor's anxiety triggers. Before thunder rolled or car doors slammed, she would be by his side, her small hand buried in his fur, whispering the calming words they had practiced together. Thor, in turn, became her silent guardian, his presence giving her strength to face the schoolyard taunts and community whispers. Academic challenges emerged as Emily's focus shifted. Her usual perfect attendance record suffered as she insisted on being present for Thor's veterinary appointments. Homework sometimes went unfinished when Thor had difficult nights. Yet in other areas she flourished surprisingly. Her reading skills advanced rapidly as she spent hours reading to Thor, and her vocabulary expanded with medical terms she learned during his treatments. The Matthews home adapted to accommodate this growing partnership. Emily's room, once pink and filled with stuffed animals, gradually transformed. A special bed for Thor appeared in the corner. Her walls became covered with charts tracking his recovery progress. Her bookshelf filled with veterinary texts and dog training manuals, far beyond her reading level but studied with determined concentration. During Thor's rehabilitation sessions, Emily became an unofficial assistant to Sarah Bennett. She learned to read Thor's body language with remarkable accuracy, often noticing signs of distress before the professionals did. Her small hands learned to help with gentle stretching exercises, and her voice became a crucial tool in keeping Thor calm during treatments. The partnership faced its first major test during a school presentation about community helpers. Emily, despite her growing isolation from classmates, insisted on bringing Thor to demonstrate his progress. Victoria and John were hesitant, but Emily's careful preparation, including a detailed safety plan and behavior charts, convinced them to support her decision. The presentation became a turning point. Emily stood before her class, her voice clear and confident, as she explained Thor's journey. When she demonstrated how Thor could now help people with mobility issues, even the most skeptical parents in attendance found their prejudices challenged. Thor's gentle interaction with a classmate who used a wheelchair revealed the truth that Emily had known all along: he was not a danger, but a healer in his own right. Through this journey, Emily's emotional intelligence grew exponentially. She learned to advocate not just for Thor, but for other vulnerable beings. When she discovered a classmate being bullied, she used the same patient, gentle approach that had worked with Thor. Her teacher noted how she would sit quietly with troubled students, offering the same calm presence she had developed during Thor's panic attacks. The cost of this growth came in childhood innocence. Emily understood pain, trauma, and healing in ways no 5-year-old should have to comprehend. She learned about injustice through the ongoing legal battles, about prejudice through community reactions, and about perseverance through Thor's daily struggles. Yet somehow these harsh lessons didn't harden her heart, they expanded it. By the time winter turned to spring, both Emily and Thor had changed profoundly. Thor's physical scars began to fade, matched by Emily's growing confidence. Together they had forged something remarkable, a partnership built on mutual healing and unconditional love. As Victoria often remarked, it became impossible to tell who was saving whom. Their story began to spread beyond Millbrook's boundaries. A local newspaper article about their journey caught regional attention. Emily found herself speaking to other children about animal welfare, her natural shyness overcome by her passion for the cause. Thor, standing proudly beside her, became living proof of the transformative power of love and determination. The first sign of trouble came on a crisp autumn morning. Victoria found their mailbox stuffed with photographs, dozens of them, showing Thor in various stages of abuse at Peterson's market stall. A handwritten note read, "Remember what he really is." The police called it harassment, but advised there was little they could do without proof of who sent them. Peterson's campaign of intimidation escalated gradually. He began appearing at places the Matthews frequented: the grocery store, the park, even outside Emily's school. He never approached them directly, but his presence cast a shadow over their daily routines. Emily started having nightmares, not of monsters, but of men with riding crops coming to take Thor away. The legal battle took an ugly turn when Peterson filed a countersuit, claiming the Matthews had stolen his valuable property. His lawyer, Richard Sterling, was known for aggressive tactics and political connections. The local media, initially sympathetic to Thor's story, began publishing questions about the Matthews' motives. Anonymous sources suggested they were seeking publicity, even financial gain. One evening, John discovered their garage door lock had been tampered with. While nothing was stolen, the message was clear: Thor wasn't safe. They installed security cameras and a new alarm system, transforming their peaceful home into a fortress. Emily asked to move her bed into Thor's room, unable to sleep unless she could hear his breathing. Peterson's influence in the community revealed itself in subtle ways. John's hospital privileges came under review, with anonymous complaints about his judgment. Victoria's school counseling caseload mysteriously decreased. Even Emily's teacher, Miss Anderson, received pressure from the school board about her supportive stance toward the family. The threat became physical one rainy afternoon. Emily and Victoria were walking Thor when a black SUV swerved toward them on the sidewalk. Thor reacted instantly, pulling them both back to safety. The vehicle sped away, but not before they glimpsed Peterson's brother behind the wheel. The police filed a report, but without clear evidence, it was dismissed as an accident. Anonymous calls began flooding the local animal control office, reporting Thor for aggression that never occurred. Each complaint required investigation, creating a paper trail that Peterson's lawyer used to build a case against Thor. Sarah Bennett worked overtime documenting Thor's gentle behavior, but the damage to public perception was mounting. The pressure took its toll on the family's relationships. John and Victoria argued about the mounting legal bills and security expenses. Emily became withdrawn at school, jumping at sudden noises, and watching constantly for Peterson's car. Thor, sensing the family's stress, began showing signs of renewed anxiety. The situation reached a breaking point when Peterson's associates began targeting their supporters. Mrs. Robinson found her flower shop vandalized. Sarah Bennett's veterinary clinic received threats of health code investigations. Even James Wilson, the retired K9 trainer who had vouched for Thor's training, reported suspicious characters photographing his home. Through it all, Peterson maintained a careful distance, always operating through others. His message was consistent: return Thor, drop the investigation into his background, and the problems would disappear. The temptation to give in grew stronger as the pressure mounted, but Emily's unwavering determination kept them fighting. The community began to divide more sharply. Some neighbors organized a support group, taking turns patrolling the street at night. Others, fearing retaliation, stopped speaking to the Matthews entirely. Local businesses displayed competing signs, some supporting Thor's cause, others pointedly advertising Peterson's market stall. The lowest point came when Emily found Thor's old chain hung on their front porch, a clear threat that paralyzed her with fear. That night, as the family huddled in their living room discussing their options, Thor demonstrated why they couldn't give up. He moved from person to person, offering comfort and strength, embodying the very qualities Peterson had tried to destroy. David Anderson, their lawyer, advised them that Peterson's actions suggested desperation. He's scared of something bigger than losing Thor, he observed. This level of retaliation hints at darker secrets. The realization that they had stumbled onto something more sinister than animal abuse added new weight to their responsibility. The family's resolve strengthened, but so did their caution. Emily no longer walked to school. John or Victoria drove her, with Thor riding in the back seat, alert and protective. They installed more security cameras and began documenting every suspicious incident. Their home became both fortress and war room, as they gathered evidence and planned their next moves. Through it all, Thor remained their center of strength, his recovery a living testament to the power of love over cruelty. Each threat reinforced their conviction that they were fighting not just for one dog, but against a system that allowed such abuse to flourish in shadows. The breakthrough came through an unexpected source. A retired police officer from Bedford County, Michael Harrison, saw Thor's picture in a local newspaper article about the legal battle. His hands shook as he dialed the Matthews number. "That's not just any service dog," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "That's Ghost, one of the most decorated K9 officers in state history." The revelation unlocked a flood of information. Ghost had been a legend in law enforcement circles. Trained from puppyhood in both search and rescue and human assistance, he had saved dozens of lives during his service. His disappearance during a training exercise had devastated his handler, Officer Rachel Stevens, who never believed the official story of an accident. Sarah Bennett arranged a meeting with Rachel Stevens at her clinic. The moment Thor saw her, his transformation was extraordinary. His tail, usually kept low, began wagging furiously. Rachel dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face as Thor Ghost pressed his head against her chest, whimpering softly. Emily watched from the corner, her small heart understanding that this was both beautiful and terrifying. The story Rachel told filled in crucial gaps. Ghost had been more than a police dog. He was part of an elite K9 unit specializing in complex rescue operations and therapy support. His gentle temperament made him uniquely suited for working with trauma victims, while his search and rescue skills were unmatched. The training accident that led to his disappearance had always seemed suspicious. Investigation records revealed a disturbing pattern. Several highly trained service dogs had vanished across multiple states. All disappeared during training exercises or transport, their microchips mysteriously removed. The thefts seemed professional, targeted, suggesting an organized operation that knew exactly which dogs to steal and when they would be vulnerable. Emily's daily diary of Thor's behaviors suddenly gained new significance. His responses to certain commands, his instinctive positioning during crises, his gentle approach to people in distress all were hallmarks of his specialized training. What Peterson had tried to break wasn't just a dog's spirit, but years of professional training worth tens of thousands of dollars. The revelation of Thor's identity attracted media attention beyond their small town. National news outlets picked up the story of the hero K-9 officer, stolen and abused, then saved by a 5-year-old girl's determination. Peterson's attempts at intimidation backfired as public scrutiny intensified. Security footage of his threats became evidence not just of harassment, but of involvement in organized crime. Rachel's testimony opened new legal avenues. As Ghost's original handler, she could prove his identity through documented training records, distinctive behavioral patterns, and even specific scars from his service days. The story of his theft became part of a larger federal investigation into the trafficking of service animals. For Emily, the truth about Thor's past was both wonderful and painful. He was already somebody's best friend, she confided to her mother one night, fear creeping into her voice. Does this mean we have to give him back? The question hung heavy in the air, complicated by love, law, and ethics. The answer came from Rachel herself. After long discussions with the Matthews family, watching Emily and Thor together, she made a difficult decision. Ghost found a new purpose, she said, her voice breaking slightly. He's not just a service dog anymore, he's a healer, teaching a little girl about courage and helping a family fight for justice. Thor's dual identity as Ghost became a symbol of both loss and redemption. His specialized training, which Peterson had tried to suppress through abuse, emerged stronger through Emily's patient love. The skills once used for official rescue operations now served a different, but equally vital purpose, helping a child show her community the power of compassion and determination. The mother-daughter bond between Emily and Victoria deepened as they worked to document Thor's journey. Victoria watched her daughter mature, handling complex emotions and ethical questions with remarkable grace. Emily's nightmares about losing Thor transformed into dreams of helping other animals, inspired by understanding his full story. Local attitudes shifted as Thor's history became public. The dangerous dog narrative crumbled in the face of his documented service record. Community members who had shunned them now approached with apologies and offers of support. The school board, previously hesitant, invited Emily to share Thor's story at an assembly about service animals and second chances. Yet the knowledge of Thor's past also brought new responsibilities. The Matthews family worked with Rachel to maintain his professional skills, incorporating service dog exercises into his rehabilitation routine. Emily learned the proper commands, proud to be part of preserving his valuable training while helping him heal. The revelation of Thor's identity as Ghost didn't just solve a mystery, it transformed their fight for justice into something larger than one family or one dog. It became a story about the intersection of service, sacrifice, healing, and the remarkable capacity of love to bridge past and present, old bonds and new beginnings. The confrontation came on a stormy Thursday afternoon, eerily similar to the night they first rescued Thor. Peterson arrived at the Matthews home with a court order and 2 police officers, his face twisted in a triumphant smirk. The document, hastily issued by a judge with known connections to Peterson's family, demanded Thor's immediate surrender pending the resolution of ownership disputes. Victoria stood in the doorway, her hands trembling as she read the order. Inside, Emily clutched Thor's fur, her small body shaking with silent sobs. John was stuck in emergency surgery at the hospital, unreachable. But the police officers, clearly uncomfortable with their role, avoided meeting Victoria's eyes as Peterson pushed past her into the house. "Time to go home," Dog Peterson sneered, brandishing a heavy chain. Thor's body tensed, but he didn't move from Emily's side. His training as Ghost emerged in his protective stance, alert but not aggressive, placing himself between Emily and the threat. One of the officers noticed this and frowned, his hand moving away from his weapon. Emily's voice cut through the tension. "He is home," she stood up. 5 years old, but somehow towering with determination. "And his name isn't Dog, it's Thor. He's Ghost. He's a hero." The second officer's eyebrows rose at the mention of Ghost's name, recognition flickering across his face. Peterson lunged forward, chain rattling. Enough of this nonsense, but before he could reach Thor, Mrs. Robinson burst through the open door, waving her phone. "Stop everything," she cried. "The federal agents are on their way. They have questions about those other missing service dogs, Mr. Peterson." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Peterson's face drained of color at the mention of federal agents. The officers exchanged glances, suddenly more interested in Peterson than in enforcing the court order. Thor remained steadfast, his eyes never leaving Peterson, his body a shield for Emily. Sarah Bennett arrived next, clutching documentation of Thor's identity as Ghost. Rachel Stevens was right behind her, still in her police uniform from her current posting. That court order was obtained through fraud, Rachel announced, her badge catching the light. "Judge Matthews is issuing a stay as we speak." Peterson backed toward the door, but found his exit blocked by James Wilson and a group of local K-9 officers who had worked with Ghost. The weight of his actions seemed to finally hit him as he realized he was surrounded by law enforcement professionals who recognized the dog he had tried to break. "You can't prove anything," Peterson blustered, but his voice shook. Thor took a single step forward, and Peterson stumbled backward, terror replacing his earlier arrogance. The chain slipped from his fingers, clattering to the floor, a sound that once would have made Thor cower, but now merely earned a steady, almost pitying gaze. Emily moved to Thor's side, her hand resting on his head. "It's okay," she whispered, though whether to Thor or Peterson wasn't clear. The truth always comes out for a moment. She sounded far older than her years, as if her journey with Thor had given her wisdom beyond her age. The federal agents arrived minutes later, their questions for Peterson focusing on much more than one stolen service dog. As they led him away, Emily hugged Thor tightly, her tears now of relief rather than fear. The Matthews living room slowly emptied of law enforcement, leaving the family to process the close call. That evening, as thunder rolled outside, Emily and Thor sat in their usual spot by the window. Victoria watched them, noting how neither flinched at the storm anymore. They had faced a different kind of thunder together and emerged stronger. The court order lay forgotten on the coffee table, its threat neutralized by the truth it had inadvertently helped reveal. Sarah Bennett called later to report that Peterson was in custody, facing multiple federal charges. The attempted seizure of Thor had backfired spectacularly, bringing to light a network of service dog trafficking that law enforcement had been trying to crack for years. Emily listened to the news, then turned to Thor with a smile. "You're safe now," she said simply. "Forever." The first signs of Emily's illness appeared subtly: a persistent cough, unusual fatigue, and a loss of her usual vibrant energy. Thor noticed before anyone else, becoming increasingly protective and refusing to leave her side. His behavior changed so markedly that Victoria finally took Emily to the hospital, where tests revealed a serious case of pneumonia requiring immediate hospitalization. The hospital's no dogs allowed policy created an immediate crisis. Thor, who had become Emily's constant protector, howled mournfully when they tried to separate them. It was Rachel Stevens who finally intervened, using her law enforcement connections to secure a special dispensation based on Thor's service dog certification and his documented therapeutic impact on Emily's well-being. During Emily's first night in the pediatric ward, Thor demonstrated why the exception was justified. When Emily's fever spiked dangerously high, he alerted the nurses before the monitoring equipment detected the change. Dr. Sarah Wilson, the pediatric specialist, was amazed by his accuracy. "He's reading her vital signs better than our machines," she noted in her medical report. The illness took a toll on Emily's usually indomitable spirit. Confined to a hospital bed, struggling to breathe, she became withdrawn and depressed. Thor responded by developing a routine that would become legendary among the hospital staff. He learned to gently place his head next to her hand when she needed comfort, to bark softly when her oxygen levels dropped, and to retrieve nurses when she showed signs of distress. Other young patients in the pediatric ward began to heal faster after Thor was granted permission to visit them briefly during his daily walks. Parents who had initially objected to a dog in the hospital watched in amazement as he intuited exactly how to approach each child, gentle with the fearful ones, playful with those needing encouragement, and calm with those in pain. Emily's recovery suffered a setback when her fever returned with frightening intensity. During one particularly difficult night, when the medications seemed to be failing, Thor refused to eat or rest. He maintained a constant vigil, his eyes fixed on Emily's face, occasionally whimpering as if sharing her pain. When she finally opened her eyes the next morning, his tail wagged for the first time in days. The medical staff began incorporating Thor into Emily's treatment plan. They noticed that her breathing improved when he lay beside her, that she fought harder against the illness when he encouraged her, and that her spirits lifted whenever he performed small tasks to help her. Dr. Wilson started documenting Thor's impact, amazed by the measurable improvements in Emily's vital signs when he was present. Victoria and John took turns staying at the hospital, but Thor never left. He slept on a special bed next to Emily's, learned to wake the nurses silently when she needed help at night, and somehow knew when she was strong enough to sit up and when she needed to rest. His devotion became a source of hope, not just for Emily, but for everyone who witnessed it. The breakthrough came after 2 weeks of uncertainty. Emily's fever finally broke, and her breathing began to improve. Thor's behavior shifted subtly. Instead of maintaining his vigilant watch, he started bringing her toys and encouraging her to play. The medical team recognized this as a sign of her recovery before their tests confirmed it. As Emily regained her strength, Thor adapted his care. He supported her first tentative walks around the ward, matching his pace perfectly to her weakened steps. When she felt strong enough to read again, he would bring her books from the small hospital library, carefully selecting ones with bright covers that made her smile. The experience transformed both Emily and Thor. Their bond, already strong, deepened into something that defied explanation. Emily emerged from her illness with a new maturity, while Thor's protective instincts were enhanced by an even deeper understanding of human vulnerability. When Emily was finally discharged, the hospital staff lined the corridors to bid farewell to the remarkable pair. Dr. Wilson submitted a formal proposal to create a therapy dog program inspired by Thor's impact on the pediatric ward. The proposal included security footage of Thor's various interventions, creating a compelling case for the healing power of the human-animal bond. Back home, Emily's recovery continued with Thor as her dedicated nurse. He seemed to know instinctively when she needed rest, when she could handle more activity, and when she was pushing herself too hard. His careful attention helped her regain her strength faster than anyone had expected, proving that sometimes the best medicine doesn't come in a bottle. The truth began to unravel during Peterson's federal investigation. Agent Sarah Parker, leading the case, discovered financial records linking Peterson to a sophisticated network of illegal dog-fighting operations across 3 states. The evidence painted a disturbing picture. Highly trained service dogs weren't just being stolen, they were being forced into underground fighting rings. Thor's scars told only part of the story. Medical records from his time as ghost revealed surgical alterations meant to hide his identity. The removal of his microchip wasn't just about concealing theft, it was part of a larger scheme to transform service dogs into fighting animals. Their advanced training made them particularly valuable. They were disciplined, powerful, and capable of understanding complex commands. The investigation uncovered a warehouse on the outskirts of Millbrook. Inside, agents found equipment used for dog fighting, along with medical supplies for treating injuries without arousing suspicion. Most disturbing were the detailed records each dog's training background, fighting history, and performance improvements meticulously documented. Emily's diary unexpectedly became crucial evidence. Her innocent observations of Thor's behaviors provided a timeline that helped prosecutors understand how service dogs were systematically broken down and rebuilt as fighters. Her notes about his nightmares, triggers, and gradual recovery offered insights into the psychological manipulation these animals endured. Rachel Stevens recognized names in Peterson's records other missing K-9 officers and service dogs whose disappearances had never been solved. The operation specifically targeted dogs with advanced training, seeing their discipline as a foundation for creating more controlled, deadly fighters. Thor's resistance to this conditioning, his refusal to fight despite the abuse, had marked him as defective in Peterson's ledger. Local law enforcement was implicated as well. Several officers had been paid to look the other way, explaining why earlier complaints about animal abuse had disappeared. The corruption reached into City Hall, with officials accepting bribes to ensure zoning laws and health inspections never threatened the operation. Mrs. Robinson's flower shop had unknowingly served as an observation post. The gang used it to monitor potential targets' service dogs being trained in the nearby park. Her detailed notes about Peterson's activities, initially kept out of concern for Thor, helped establish patterns of surveillance and theft. The scale of the operation stunned the community. Dozens of dogs had passed through Peterson's hands, many sold to fighting rings across the country. Thor was one of the few survivors who could still demonstrate the gentle nature of their original training. His story became a testament to the resilience of these extraordinary animals. Emily's presence at the federal briefing was unusual but essential. She shared her observations about Thor's behaviors, unknowingly helping agents understand how service dogs were identified and targeted. But her simple descriptions of his recovery provided hope that other rescued dogs could also be rehabilitated. But the investigation revealed sophisticated methods for breaking down service dog training. Peterson's records detailed techniques for using the dog's ingrained obedience against them, exploiting their loyalty to force compliance. Thor's case was marked with multiple failure notes, his persistent gentleness labeled as stubborn resistance. Sarah Bennett's veterinary records proved crucial in documenting the progression of abuse. X-rays and treatment notes revealed patterns of injury consistent with fight training, while blood work showed evidence of performance-enhancing drugs. The systematic nature of the abuse demonstrated the operation's professional organization. The warehouse raid led to more discoveries. Hidden cameras revealed a network of spotters who identified potential target service dogs with specific training profiles. The operation had infiltrated legitimate K-9 training facilities, gaining inside knowledge of valuable dogs and their schedules. As federal agents pieced together the network, Thor's significance grew. His recovery under Emily's care became a model for understanding how these highly trained dogs could be rehabilitated. The bond between the small girl and the former K-9 officer offered hope for other rescued animals. The revelations sent shockwaves through the service dog community. Training facilities strengthened their security, and new protocols were established for protecting valuable working dogs. Thor's story sparked a national conversation about the vulnerability of service animals and the need for stronger protection laws. Agent Parker's final report highlighted the sophistication of the criminal enterprise, but also emphasized the power of community vigilance. A 5-year-old's determination to save one dog had ultimately exposed a criminal network that had operated in shadows for years, proving that justice often begins with a single act of compassion. As federal agents dug deeper into Peterson's background, a dark history emerged that stretched far beyond dog fighting. Records revealed that Marcus Peterson wasn't even his real name. He was Michael Prentice, a former veterinary technician whose license had been revoked 15 years ago for conducting illegal experiments on animals. The investigation uncovered a pattern of identity changes in criminal enterprises spanning 2 decades. Under various aliases, Peterson had moved from state to state, always staying one step ahead of law enforcement. His knowledge of veterinary medicine had made him valuable to criminal organizations, enabling him to treat fighting dogs without drawing attention from legitimate clinics. A breakthrough came when agents discovered a connection to an international animal trafficking ring. Peterson's expertise had been used to forge health certificates and documentation for illegally imported exotic animals. His market stall, far from being a simple vendor's operation, served as a front for coordinating these activities. Emily's father, John Matthews, recognized Peterson's true identity from his medical training days. 15 years ago, as a resident, he had reported suspicious activities at a veterinary clinic where Peterson worked. The subsequent investigation had led to Peterson's license revocation, explaining his vindictive focus on destroying the Matthews family. The criminal web extended into local politics. Peterson's brother on the hospital board was revealed to be another false identity, part of a network of planted officials who protected the operation. The corrupt system explained how Peterson had obtained the fraudulent court order attempting to reclaim Thor. Victoria's research into Peterson's background revealed a disturbing pattern of targeting families with children. He deliberately chose locations near schools, using his market stall to observe potential victims. His attempt to intimidate Emily wasn't just about reclaiming Thor, it was a calculated move based on years of similar tactics. Rachel Stevens connected Peterson to several unsolved cases involving missing police dogs. His knowledge of K-9 training facilities had come from a brief stint as a maintenance worker, giving him access to secure areas and training schedules. The theft of Ghost had been personally motivated a chance to corrupt a highly decorated service dog. Local business owners came forward with stories of extortion and threats. Peterson had built a network of frightened silence, using his knowledge of illegal activities to control those who might expose him. Mrs. Robinson's flower shop had been just one of many businesses forced to cooperate through intimidation. The evidence painted a picture of a methodical criminal who used his veterinary knowledge for cruel purposes. Laboratory notes found in his private records detailed experiments in behavior modification, using pain and fear to break down animals' training. Thor's resilience had particularly frustrated him, leading to increasingly desperate attempts to reclaim and correct his failure. Sarah Bennett's testimony about Thor's injuries helped prosecutors understand Peterson's systematic approach to breaking service dogs. His methods were designed to exploit the animal's training, using their ingrained obedience to create fighting machines. The psychological sophistication of his techniques indicated years of refined cruelty. The investigation revealed Peterson's childhood history of animal cruelty, documented in juvenile records but sealed until now. His progression from early warning signs to sophisticated criminal enterprise provided a textbook case of escalating antisocial behavior. Mental health professionals studying the case noted how he specifically targeted service animals, showing a desire to corrupt symbols of loyalty and service. As Peterson's true identity became public, more victims came forward. Former employees shared stories of witnessing abuse but feeling powerless to stop it. His network of false identities had made reporting difficult, as complaints seemed to disappear into a system he had carefully corrupted. Emily's role in exposing Peterson became even more remarkable as the extent of his crimes became clear. Her simple act of compassion for one abused dog had unraveled a decades-long criminal career. Against Peterson's calculated cruelty, her pure empathy had proven more powerful than his network of corruption. The final piece of evidence came from Peterson's own security cameras, installed to protect his operation but ultimately documenting his crimes. Footage showed the systematic abuse of animals, the coordination of illegal fighting events, and the network of accomplices who enabled his activities. Federal prosecutors prepared a case that would ensure Peterson never again had access to animals. The evidence gathered painted a picture not just of animal cruelty, but of a sophisticated criminal enterprise that had exploited both animals and humans through fear and corruption. The federal courthouse buzzed with anticipation on the morning of Peterson's sentencing. The case had drawn national attention, with animal rights activists, service dog handlers, and community members filling every available seat. Emily sat in the front row, Thor at her feet, both watched over by a protective circle of K-9 officers. Judge Eleanor Whitman's voice rang clear through the hushed courtroom as she delivered her verdict. Peterson faced multiple life sentences not just for animal cruelty and trafficking, but for running a criminal enterprise that had terrorized communities across 3 states. His network of corruption, extending into law enforcement and local government, warranted the harshest possible penalties. The evidence Emily had helped gather played a crucial role in the prosecution's case. Her diary entries documenting Thor's recovery had provided a timeline that connected Peterson's activities to dozens of other crimes. The judge specifically commended her courage, noting that sometimes the greatest acts of justice begin with a child's simple compassion. Thor's presence in the courtroom seemed fitting the abused dog-turned-hero, whose rescue had exposed a criminal empire. When Peterson was led away in handcuffs, Thor didn't even growl. He simply stood, tall and dignified, Emily's hand resting on his head. Their quiet strength spoke volumes about the victory of love over cruelty. The community's response was overwhelming. A fund established for rehabilitating other rescued dogs quickly exceeded its goals. Local businesses that had once shunned the Matthews family now proudly displayed photos of Thor and Emily. The school board, previously hesitant about Thor's presence, implemented a comprehensive therapy dog program. Rachel Stevens presented Emily with a special K-9 unit badge, making Thor an honorary member of the force. The ceremony, held on the courthouse steps, drew hundreds of supporters, former skeptics who had feared the dangerous dog. Now witnessed the truth a gentle warrior who had never lost his capacity to love and protect. Mrs. Robinson's flower shop became a gathering point for celebrating the victory. She decorated her window with photos chronicling Thor's journey from abuse to triumph. Each image told part of their story: the rescue in the storm, the long rehabilitation, the hospital vigil, and finally the day of justice. The Matthews family emerged stronger from their ordeal. John and Victoria had discovered reserves of courage they hadn't known they possessed. Emily had grown from a shy 5-year-old into a powerful advocate for animal welfare. And Thor, their faithful protector, had proved that even the deepest wounds could heal with love and patience. As camera flashes lit up the courthouse steps, Emily hugged Thor tightly. "We did it," she whispered in his ear. His gentle wag and soft eyes said everything about justice served, about faith rewarded, about the extraordinary bond between a little girl and her rescued dog who had changed their community forever. 10 years after Peterson's sentencing, the Matthews living room wall displayed a collection of photographs and awards chronicling an extraordinary journey. Thor, his muzzle now touched with grey, but his eyes still bright, wore a special therapy dog vest adorned with certifications. Beside him, a teenage Emily proudly displayed her Youth Advocate Awards for animal welfare. The journey from rescued dog to certified therapy animal had transformed not just Thor, but an entire community. The program they started at Millbrook General Hospital had grown into a model for pediatric therapy dog services nationwide. Thor's gentle presence had helped countless children through illness, trauma, and recovery, his own story of healing inspiring those facing their darkest hours. Emily's childhood diary had evolved into a published book, Saving Thor: A Story of Hope, which became required reading in many veterinary programs. Her experiences had shaped her future. At 15, she was already taking advanced classes in animal behavior and psychology, determined to continue the work that began with one act of compassion in a stormy market. The Matthews home became a sanctuary for rehabilitating abused service dogs. Thor, drawing on both his professional training and his experience of recovery, proved remarkably skilled at helping other dogs overcome trauma. Emily worked alongside professional trainers, her intuitive understanding of animal behavior growing stronger with each success story. Their influence spread beyond Millbrook. Emily was invited to speak at national conferences on animal welfare, sharing the stage with veterinary experts and law enforcement officials. Her perspective, part advocate, part survivor, brought a unique authenticity to discussions about animal abuse and rehabilitation. Thor's presence beside her served as living proof of the change they championed. The legislation they helped inspire, known as Thor's Law, strengthened protections for service animals and increased penalties for abuse. Police departments across the country adopted new protocols for investigating animal cruelty, recognizing its links to broader criminal activities. The changes they sparked rippled outward, touching countless lives, both human and animal. Victoria often reflected on how that rainy night at the market had altered their family's destiny. Her daughter's simple act of compassion had not only saved one dog but had launched a movement. The frightened 5-year-old had grown into a confident young advocate, while the abused German Shepherd had reclaimed his noble purpose, becoming a healer of wounded spirits. In their garden, where Emily once played with butterflies, therapy sessions now took place. Children with trauma, illness, or disabilities found comfort in Thor's patient presence. He seemed to know instinctively what each child needed: gentle encouragement, quiet companionship, or playful distraction. Emily worked alongside him, their partnership a testament to the enduring power of love and determination. As Thor rested his head on Emily's lap during quiet evenings, his grey muzzle and her teenage face reflected the years they'd shared. Their story had become more than a tale of rescue; it was a beacon of hope, proving that the darkest beginnings could lead to the brightest futures when guided by compassion, courage, and unwavering love. Dear valued viewers, thank you for joining us for this touching story of Emily and Thor. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed or been part of an animal rescue story? Has an animal changed your life? Your support means everything to our team. Please consider subscribing to our channel and hitting the like button to help us continue sharing these powerful stories of hope and redemption. Share this video with friends and family who might be touched by Emily and Thor's journey. Together, we can spread awareness about animal welfare and the incredible bonds between humans and their faithful companions. Let's build a community dedicated to making a difference, one story at a time.